Hey, what's up, everybody? BDO 44 coming at you with another video. So, yeah. Lakers in the playoffs, man. I get a chance to really sit back and think about that after mulling over how we got here, the energy surrounding the team and the ups and downs and the different things that we've talked about we didn't like, and all those different things. We're in the playoffs, baby. We made it to the playoffs. Congratulations. Of course, I've already made a video reacting to the game last night against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and I got up at like 3 a.m. and made a video where I was talking about the Lakers and the Grizzlies and just what I respect, what I don't, about how the Grizzlies have been moving, some of the matchups that I think could be coming and all that. But right now, I'm just thinking about LeBron James and the respect that he's trying to earn with our team. I just see him trying his very best to do all of the things that he's supposed to do, in my mind, in terms of keeping that mentality going when we talk to the media, and just trying to respect all that it is that we need to. I was listening to Skip Bayless reacted to LeBron James' statement, and he was essentially talking about how LeBron said he hadn't been thinking about the Memphis Grizzlies lick. And I think LeBron saying that is essentially helping us understand that he wasn't overlooking the Timberwolves, which is something that we talk about a lot on this channel. We want to stay present, just like he always tells us. It's one of the things that I like about Bron the most. It's when he talks about basketball, he's talking about staying present right now. And I think that that's one of the things that he's brought to this team that I think I've kind of taken and understood a little bit better since he's gotten here. And so I could definitely credit him with that, helping me understand that, yo, sometimes when you zoom in and look at everything, it's going to give you a whole lot to overreact to. It's going to give you a whole lot to want to get rid of stuff, get rid of people, all that kind of stuff. But if you wait a little while and let the team do what it needs to do and let it meet every moment as it comes, when you look at the end, you may still be in the place you want to be. Especially if you took every one of those steps seriously. And that's really what I try to preach it to this camera. When I'm talking about our team and LeBron James particularly, I just want that consistency to come from what it is that I see him trying to pour the effort into. You know, when he's speaking to us and telling us how he's not skipping steps and how he's serious about staying present, I want to see that as it pertains to on the court, as from possession to possession to possession. Now, here's the thing that I always try to remind myself, is that I'm not a basketball genius. I have a lot of things that I love about the game, and I think I know what it takes to win and lose, but I've also lost a lot of basketball games, so obviously I've been out-strategized. I ain't the greatest basketball mind or player. And sometimes I get married to certain things as it pertains to what people should be doing on the basketball court. And the older I get, the more basketball understanding I receive, the more I understand that things don't necessarily have to make sense. I speak for myself, was raised to look at basketball and say, you basketball players and coaches and everybody are supposed to perform. And within the word supposed comes certain things that I expect to see that would satisfy the word supposed. With that being said, there are a lot of different ways that the game of basketball can be played. There's a lot of different ways to view the game. There's a lot of different ways to receive it when people are talking about it as they've played it. And one of the things that I've been able to pick up and receive is that the game is not as simple as we see it. So as we behold it and say, this guy's supposed to be doing this, this guy's supposed to be doing that, that may not necessarily be possible on the court, and we may not be able to see that if we don't have a certain basketball mind. So when I sit back and say, I don't ever want to see LeBron James shoot 14 three-point shots, what I also understand is I can sit down with somebody who helped me understand why 14 shots should have been taken in that scenario and walk away with an understanding that would bring me something different to tell you. I am aware of my basketball ignorance. And when I talk, sometimes I don't stay consistent in that because I have to undo the notion that certain things are supposed to be done as opposed to the game being as fluid as I ultimately believe it is, which means that no two things have to be alike, or you can see the same two things twice and it would be as random or as possible as any other situation in the world as it pertains to the sport of basketball. The ball can carry them off the rim, or go straight in. There's so many different things that ultimately will determine what happens next, and matchups and things of that nature for a player and versus a person who talks about the game and watches it from a side view angle at all times. A lot of times we think players should be able to see all that we see from their angle. You know what I mean? Certain things are just not visible to you unless you have the side view angle, and then from there, just the same to them. They can see things on the court that we would never be able to based on the view we have, perspectives and things of that nature that allow us certain trajectory understandings, how far something is, how close something is, how far, you know, up something may be versus how quickly they can get to the ground, whatever it may be. A lot of that stuff, I think, has a lot more to do with context that we cannot obtain based on the circumstances that we have as fans who didn't play. And that's one thing I try to take as seriously as possible when I listen to guys who have played, talk the game, and talk about what it is that they respect and what they don't. And then I listen to the people who raised me, so to speak, the Stephen A's and those guys who taught me how to hold those guys accountable, and I realized they had more game to learn. I was listening to people who didn't know the game, teaching me how to critique it. But I weigh that against what I've seen, and I have more confidence to say that I have put my own hours in regards to what it is I've experienced. I put my own hours in, listen to basketball players correct people who were wrong when they were speaking about the game, situations. People were so confident but didn't necessarily have the context to garner the understanding from which to know. I listen to people like J.J. Redick, listen to people like Steven Jackson, or anybody who has played the game and has critiqued others. Listen to people like Charles Barkley. And I just pick up little nuggets from everything that those guys say. And the one thing that I can't understand for certain is that what it takes to win a basketball game in the NBA may not be as simple as what I can see from my side view. But I'm damn sure going to tell you what it is I'm used to knowing how to say until I learn better. And so when I say I think the team needs to not shoot as many threes, it's because I understand that if they do, it's going to beget more bad habits. It doesn't necessarily mean that what I see on the floor is as perfect as to say I'm certain that LeBron James shouldn't have taken 14 threes. I'm telling you that based on what it is that I see with the limited understanding of my basketball IQ, coupled with the things that I've learned along the way about how to keep people in line and not have people lose their patience, I think it would be wise for us to run plays that involve others. That may not be the best strategy on the basketball floor. Once you start unlayering the understanding of a guy like LeBron James versus my understanding, do you understand what I'm saying? You start finding out that, Brandon had no idea what he was talking about. Bron should have taken all 14 of them threes, and that's why we walked away a victor and nothing else would have worked. I don't see that, and nor do I believe that, but that does not mean that I'm not completely wrong. I could be. I could not. But the bottom line is I'm not an expert. And I'm okay with that as I speak about this game very confidently. And I'm looking forward to finding out the context necessary to help me understand the game in ways that I've yet to. And as I do, I'll add that as truth and talk just as matter-of-factly about that as I do right now. So that's what I want people to understand, that there is a way to behold the game that I have yet to, and there's a way for you to behold the game differently too, because that's exactly the science of basketball. It's a science, man, and it's ever evolving. And what I believe is that it is exactly as fluid of a game as people tell me it is, which means that a lot of the rules that we're married to right now, a lot of the ways the game is supposed to be played, the way the game is supposed to be spaced out, and how we've gotten away from certain things, I just think that those things can change once again and overall change the way that we view the game and how it's supposed to be played, how the rules are supposed to be, or how best to strategize putting players on the floor so that you can get the best possible outcome. I think we know exactly how to, as if the science is complete. And that just bothers me a bit, because there's no such thing as a complete science. So this is where I'm looking at in regards to the Lakers. I just obviously love the fact that we're in the playoffs. Obviously love the fact that they've been able to overcome what it is that I think has been bad strategy to ultimately give us a lot of victories that led us to the 7th seed that we're in. I say a lot of victories because that's another thing you have to behold and realize. You look at your record and then you look around at everybody else and you realize half the teams have lost games on purpose. So the schedules are as they are, as we've talked about a lot. You can't look at it and say, oh, our record versus Chicago, our record versus Golden State, it isn't the same world anymore. And Losing is something that we just kind of use as a tool to get us what we want in this league, which is betraying everything that competition is all about. But it is just where we're at. It's how they found to operate. And so, again, science ain't done. They got to find a better science so that the holes that are open can be, you know, closed up, and we can have an overall more reasonable product. I think is what I would say reasonable, in the sense that we can see stuff that actually adds up to what it is that we're supposed to see in the statistics. You know, stuff that's probable does happen as opposed to stuff that's improbable happening all the time. And so that's what we talk about a lot. You know, I look at the Minnesota Timberwolves game last night, and I just say there was really no true way for the Minnesota Timberwolves to compete, and yet the Lakers found a way to keep that game close, give it overtime, give the fans something to watch, or otherwise the probabilities would tell us that game was boring, should have been boring, and should have ended with the Lakers up by a lot. And so it's one of those situations where it's like, am I to assume that the game was manipulated? I mean, if you listen to me talk all the time, you're probably going to think I'm going to say yes. It's one of those situations where you just see so many different calls that don't go your way, the versus does go the other team's way, and vice versa, depending on what team you're looking at. And you just feel like it has been manipulated because both teams walk away pissed off at the referees. So that's one thing that can lead a regular mind to say, yo, yeah, something was awry. Because I remember our guy who didn't get not one but 2 blocks that should have been credited his name, that should have at least been taken a look at, that neither were, that we all thought were blocks. In certain situations such as that did affect the game yesterday and ultimately made it so that we saw more basketball. It's the same thing I said about the Utah game. Yeah, the Lakers did a lot of stuff that ultimately put themselves in a position to have to play overtime against a lesser Utah team. But we saw calls and things that went a certain way that ultimately made it so that we played more basketball. It just was what it was. They stretch out the game. And another thing that I keep seeing that is starting to make me wonder if there's something to see is the random stoppage of the clock. Every single game or every other game I see, there's some clock malfunction. And while that could very well be actually happening, what could also be happening is stoppage, scheduled stoppage in play. Because usually when something like that's happened, the ball is inbounded and somebody's in the process of running a fast break or putting the ball into a certain motion that would otherwise start the pace off a certain way. They're able to stop that pace, inbound the ball from the sideline, and then from there, whatever happens from that sideline. What happened in that sideline was we turned the ball over in that situation, if I'm not mistaken. Don't hold me to that. I'm just running off memory. But if I'm not mistaken, that little stoppage in this particular game led to us inbounding a turnover. These are the type of things I'm studying every game. There seems to be one of these stoppages every other game all over the country. Malfunctions? You tell me. But you can damn sure be certain you're going to see one at the end of the first quarter or something like that. You can damn sure you're going to see one. Oops. Clock stopped. Everybody stopped. Inbound the ball from the side of the weird angle. Hope it gets there to you. Tired of it. And stuff like that, I just look at it and say, ooh, yeah, you can do that. You can totally do that a bunch of times. Pulse that out amongst all the games throughout the schedule, and find that as a means of controlling pace, controlling clock, controlling what you see. All different types of stuff can be done that way if you do that schedule every single game, or every 3 games, or every 4 games across multiple conferences. There's a lot of different ways you can do weird stuff to manipulate things just right, and that is something that can be done to do that. So it's like, man, am I a conspiracy theorist? No, I'm just a brain that sees things a certain way, and you can't run certain things past me. That's the problem. Stuff everybody ain't looking at, I'm just staring straight at. It's like, yeah, right. Yeah, right. Patterns, stuff like that. Yeah. It's just one of those situations where it's like, I just don't want to see that stuff because I know that because I see it, someone else can master it. That's what bothers me. I know that there's a guy who can walk into a casino and just handle amazing amounts of stuff just by understanding stuff like this. Like, oh, timing, numbers. Ooh, they hit a hand there. I can see what they're hiding. Okay, I can manipulate the whole thing just with my mind. It's like when you got people like that out there, you don't want to see manipulation like this. You don't want to see that. That's what it really comes down to. You don't want to see that type of manipulation. So that's where I'm at with it. Numbers are somewhat sacred to me. I think there's a lot of stuff that can be understood through numbers, and that's just my own little spiritual, personal nonsense, whatever. If you believe in that, cool. If you don't, it is fine completely. I'm just looking at stuff and say, yo, when you toy with numbers, eventually what you're hiding in between those numbers is going to show. It's just going to show. It may take some time, but whatever it is you're fudging, it's gonna show. If someone's doing the math, they're gonna see it mess up. So that's what it really comes down to with the NBA. They're not hiding what they're doing very well. They want to implement betting into the game, but they didn't study it well enough to hide it properly, in my humble opinion. So now it's a lot. And you look at it, you see it every day. And so when I look at basketball, I can't ignore that and assess what I'm seeing. There's no way not to talk about it and to see it for what it is. It's there. It's like a black eye on someone's face. I can see it. And so I want, every day I talk about this. This is not new, but every day I feel strongly because, we're seeing competition that isn't actually competition. We're seeing strategy that doesn't necessarily lead to success. It just leads to people having more and being able to do less with it. And see, that's another thing. Okay, so now all these teams are going around trying to tank to get their best pick. Dallas is going to inherit the 10th pick. Who else? Portland's going to put themselves in position to get their pick. Whatever happens with Minnesota, if they fall out, they'll get a better pick. Whatever happens, ineptitude is providing players to places that have engaged in that ineptitude. That's the normal ecosystem of the NBA, but you're rewarding teams for being bad. So you have teams trying to be bad on purpose, and then you have players going into situations where teams aren't just simply bad and they're never getting off the ground. The players aren't getting off the ground. Real talented players going into organizations and not getting a good fresh start on their careers because of the ecosystem for which losing is purposeful. And so that is what ends up deteriorating. Now you got all these great assets coming to bad hands, so to speak. My hand is bad, but I got all this stuff, so whatever's in my hand is going to end up being dropped because my hand ain't going to keep that grip. So it's like this is what we're doing with our best talent in the league. You're giving the best assets to the worst hands. And so that has to be reimagined to me. That has to be reimagined because it's now about acquiring those assets, not necessarily winning at all. It's not even about winning the championship. People are foregoing chances at championships so that they can get quality assets. The game they're actually playing is trade them, hoard picks. What can I do around those games so that me, the GM, and me, the owner, can win those games? Because those are the shots that we're shooting. Those are the dunks that we're dunking. Those are the steals that we're getting. Our game is the game that matters, and that's what I'm seeing there, because that's the game that's going to get them the most money. They get the LeBron James piece, or they get enough pieces to be able to trade for a LeBron James piece. They can get that revenue that LeBron James brings, whether the team's winning or not. Then they can have subpar seasons where they don't do nothing at all, and have a guy that's going to bring them billions of dollars and fans coming to the seats, as to which they can do the bare minimum and be wealthy for it. This is what the game is. It's not to help you win. It's to give ourselves excuses not to. So we do everything we can to harbor as much talent as possible. We do everything we can to make the environment for which mediocrity is acceptable, because the pressure is too much to be excellent. So rather, it's easier to make the environment itself less pressurized than to meet those expectations of the past. And that is something that I'm not with. I ain't with it. As a fan, that's not what we want. That's not what we're paying for. That's not what you're selling us. That's false advertisement, more or less. If you want me to believe that I should believe in teams, then you can't tell me that we're foregoing winning to acquire assets that are supposed to help me win, but will actually lose and then want to leave because of it. See how that works? Now I get Anthony Edwards. We're trash because we've been doing things trash, going to continue to do things trash, and we'll be rewarded for being trash by getting the best players. But those players are going to want to leave because we're trash. And we're going to suck really bad because we're developing young players in the process of being no good. So you see how all this doesn't add up at all? This is why I said I want Wembanyama to go to a middle-of-the-pack team. I would rather him go to a team that's either really good or really solid. Because when I think about great paths, I think about a guy like James Worthy. Can you think of a better path than that? He was drafted, was it 3rd overall to the Lakers, and played there his entire career throughout the duration of a dynasty. Like, I can't think of a better path than that. And he was as amazing as he was. The best talent was inherited to the best team and had the best career possible. Why don't we see more of that? How come that's so bad? You see what I'm saying? How come that's so bad? When I think about the Chicago Bulls, it's another improbable situation. Now I look at the Chicago Bulls. When I look at the Chicago Bulls, I'm not thinking of the greatness of Michael Jordan. I'm looking at the salary of Scottie Pippen, because that's what enabled them to actually be as good as they were. It wasn't Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan would have been a fantastic shooting guard in a bad situation if they didn't have that contract allowing them so much to be able to do. Having a Hall of Fame player on like $1 million contract, it allows you to pay Michael, it allows you to pay Dennis, it allows you to have in Ron Harper, it allows you to have Kukoc, it allows you to have all the other stuff they had. You don't even get a good enough team around Mike if you don't have that contract. You know what I'm saying? This type of stuff that's like, yo, this is context. Help us understand what we were looking at the whole time. That's what we were looking at the whole time. I look at Tim Duncan and the way that they were able to win. The Spurs were amazing, but that's because Tim Duncan was always taking $50 million every time he re-up. He was due 150, he was taking 50. So, of course, the team was going to be better than everybody else. There wasn't no other superstars doing that. None. He was simply less rich to win. And he has all the rings because of it, but people don't want to make that decision. They don't want to be less rich. And they ain't going to win. They ain't going to be excellent. And the fans thinking we think they do want to be excellent. We don't know necessarily all of this. And if we do know all of this, it ain't being presented to us like I'm presenting to you right here. It's not flat and center, front and center. So no distractions. This is what it is. This is what it is. Them guys took pay cuts. Every last one of them dudes took pay cuts. Timmy was taking pay cuts. Scottie was taking pay cuts. And with the Golden State Warriors, well, they got a special situation there because they were able to just draft well and have inherited talent. 2nd round picks turned to Hall of Famers. 7th pick overall, 2nd best shooter ever. The guy that we got that Minnesota passed on twice, ended up being the greatest shooter ever. Like, you just got what you needed. Golden State just got, it was God, man. I'll tell you right now, the blessings came. Somebody was praying for the Oakland area and made sure that they had a dynasty finally. That's what I saw there, honestly. Everything they needed just came their way, and because they had their bird rights, it just worked out, and then those guys did the work and made themselves excellent. Simple. Everything that needed to happen, they did it. But it's like that don't happen very often. You can't just manufacture that everywhere, especially if a guy's going to take $50 million worth of your cap and only do $40 million worth of stuff. It doesn't work. You need those teammates. You need that discount on your cap somewhere. We talking about the Miami Heat. People really believe in the Miami Heat, but the reality is Miami Heat has the opposite of the Scottie Pippen, Tim Duncan situation. Miami Heat have a bunch of people eating up their cap that ain't doing nothing. Players on the roster spot that ain't even there to play. And then people look at them with an idea. The Heat ain't supposed to do nothing. The Heat are a bunch of clusters of players that should probably be moved around in different places so that real talent comes in and help the Heat. And then nobody really want to say that, but that's exactly what it is. He ain't even good enough to be here. The Heat are worse than their record, in my opinion. And you have to rely on Kyle Lowry trick shots, up and under trick scoop shots to go in order for you to get some points on the board. I mean, it's just not a good team, man. And it's because of the Duncan Robinson contract. It's because of the Kyle Lowry contract. It's because of that on top of Hero, Bam, and Jimmy all on max contracts. You can only afford Max Strus. You can only afford Caleb Martin. You can only afford Gabe Vincent. And those guys are not up to par with some of the other benches around the league. They're not even close. You've just been able to get away with it for a time. As I was saying last night, that ain't real. You know what I mean? So it's like, this is what you need to understand when you're looking at basketball rosters. This is why it's so easy for me to pick certain rosters over others, even though they have better cores. When I look at Phoenix, I don't see nothing. Everybody looks at Phoenix like, oh my God. I look at Phoenix, see 4 people. Like, I'm not moved at all. They're going to get knocked out of here. They're going to get knocked out of here fairly easily, maybe even by the Clippers. They just don't have the depth, man. They really don't. And people are going to find that out the hard way. And it's like, I'm not confused by this, because when I was thinking maybe I could have it wrong, I was going over that with other teams that I was proven right about in regards to this. You see what I'm saying? So it's like, maybe I'm looking at it wrong. This could be another one of them 14 threes LeBron things. Maybe I just need more context, but tendencies, they tell me what I need to know. you need your cap situation. When I say your books need to be clean, this is what I'm talking about. You need no Duncan Robinsons, you need Scottie Pippens, you need Tim Duncans. And if you don't have that, you had better be constructed like Golden State with everybody having their bird rights. If not, you're going to be a team that's not going to have enough. 9 out of 10 times. You know what I'm saying? You're just not. Unless you're able to do what the Lakers did. What did the Lakers do? We found something out of nothing. Turned it into something. Something out of nothing. Made good trades. It wasn't looking good, and everybody knows that. But where we're at right now is because we found Austin Reeves. It's because we found a THT. Even though we traded him for stuff we didn't want, we found him in the first place. If we had a Udonis Haslem on our roster, there would have been no THT. There would have been no Austin Reeves. There would have been no Alex Caruso. You see what I'm saying? You don't fool around with your roster spots. So have clean books, man, and know what you're looking at with these teams. If a team ain't got no bench, they trash. I don't give a damn who their superstars are. This is not yesterday's NBA. You can't win with 4 players. You're going to get in foul trouble. Other teams are going to be deeper than you, etc., etc. Nobody's shrinking their bench to 7 players, and if they are, they're getting beat. I'm telling you, this is not a game. I'm not confused. This is going to play itself out exactly as it is. Phoenix cannot win the championship unless their bench plays outside of themselves. And maybe they do. Maybe they do, right? But what I'm telling you is they had better. They freaking better. You know, and as I look at the Memphis Grizzlies, as I told you guys this morning, their bench ain't as strong as it needs to be to face a team like us. Not if we're doing what we're supposed to do. They just don't have enough. With the players that they're missing, Steven Adams on a bad contract, injured, that hurts them bad. That's where they're really getting kicked around. Steven Adams on what, $20-something million? Nah, that can't be. He needs to be like 3 different players. He needs to be like 3 different players for their circumstance. And so these are the type of stuff. It's like, yo, that's going to hurt them. Brandon Clark, they paid him right before he got hurt, right? Some more they cap hurt. Boom. He's out. Ja on 160, 170, whatever it is, 200 million. That's out the way. Jaren Jackson, 150, 200 million, whatever. That's out the way. They play Dylan Brooks yet? I think so. They play Desmond Bane yet? Probably so. There goes your cap right there. Everything else better be very good. Also, Luke Kennard, ain't he on like a 50 million? There we go. Like, you know what I'm saying? They good if they have everybody together. But once you start removing pieces, the depth is gone. You don't have the depth. You know what I'm saying? And people laugh at teams like New York. I see depth. Their whole bench unit is a starting 5 somewhere else. You Quickly, you're Toppin, all those dudes, those are bench. Of course New York's better than some of these teams. Of course. And it's going to play itself out. You know, I'm telling y'all, Cleveland is a good starting 5. The bench is trash. They're not favored to win the series because of it. I'm telling you. I look at the Atlanta Hawks. After watching them last night, their bench is better than people think. They're going to give Boston a game or 2. And if Boston's bench don't show up, it could be a shock the world type situation. Because at the end of the day, the Okongwus and the Johnsons and Bogdanovich and dudes is for real. So if for some reason DeJounte and Trey don't have it going on, and, you know, any type of situation where Collins ain't necessarily have it going on, well, you're going to bring in Okongwu. You're going to bring in Johnson. They're going to be like starters. And that is a dynamic that I don't think the Boston's ready for in regards to Atlanta. They're not ready for that. This ain't a one-game situation where you see them and then tomorrow you see Charlotte and after that you see Orlando. No. You got to see them again. They saw you. The bench has been exposed for what it is or what it isn't. And now you got to see their bench again for game 2. And you're going to see the fullness of their team. Okay, they got a variation of you. Okay, now you got to see that same thing for game 3. They're giving you different variations of what it is you have. And if you only got 7, you're bringing the same tired 7 dudes back at them. Okay, they're bringing more at you, more waves. Maybe you rolled an ankle. Now you're down to 6 players. What they got, still the same wave coming at you. Maybe they rolled an ankle, but guess what? They still got more than you. So as they're coming at you, more series gets played. You drop a game, now you got more. It's extended. You got to see them waves more often as they're just getting them 7 players you got. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. You're going to bring in your back of the bench guys every once in a while to give yourself a breather, and your lead is going to go. You're going to lose on the boards or whatever it is those guys can't do is going to get exposed by the bench that can. This is a thing in the playoffs, way more so than it is in a one-game situation. And when you watch 30 years of NBA playoff basketball, you ain't confused by this no more. Nobody can sell you beachfront property in Iowa with 3 superstars making $200 million a piece, and then the rest of their team a bunch of plumbers and guys that look like me. You can't sell me that. I know better. And I'm going to make sure everybody else does too. So that's what I got to say, man. BDL 44. I thank you all for watching.